Sometime around 1950, Lauson began to replace all its earlier engine model types with what appeared to be improved or enhanced models. Many of these improved or enhanced engines have very few changes to distinguish them from their earlier counterparts. In the early 1950s or very late 1940s, Lauson upgraded its horizontal shaft LMC model to the model LMH, the horizontal shaft engine seen here. This engine, for all intents and purposes, is an LMC bored to 1 3/4 inches to give it 1 horsepower. With the introduction of the LMH, Lauson also produced the LMV, the vertical shaft engine you see here. This engine is the LMH model turned on its side to create a vertical shaft engine. Both the LMH and LMV are uncommon engines, I suspect because by the early 1950s there was little call for a 1 horsepower engine. The engines you are currently viewing are model type RSH engines, upgrades to the RSC engines you saw earlier in this video series. The RSH model engines were another popular engine for Lauson since they replaced the very popular RSC, and there were a profusion of different RSH models built. All RSH models are stated to produce 2 horsepower. Currently you see an RSH 899 and an RSH 753 equipped with a gear reduction unit. The RSH was one of the few engine model type Tecumseh continued to build in limited quantities through into the early 1950s, after they had retired most all of the cast-iron Lauson models in 1958. When Lauson replaced its RSC model engines with the upgraded RSH, they were still building engines for the Goodall Mower to the Goodall specification. To fulfill this contract, the RSC blocks were replaced with RSH blocks, resulting in the Lauson RSH 775, the RSH Goodall equivalent to the RSC Goodall engine. This engine is the RSH version of the RSC Goodall engine you saw earlier in this video series. Other than swapping the RSC block and appliances for the RSH block and appliances, and using the RSV base plate, no other engineering changes were made to this engine. I believe Lauson and then Tecumseh continued to build this engine for Goodall through into the late 1950s. When the contract with Goodall expired early in the 1950s and Lauson could legally build vertical shaft engines and sell them to Goodall competition, Lauson began building its own version of the Goodall RSH to sell to mower companies who were competitors to the Goodall Manufacturing Company. That engine is the RSV you see here, basically a horizontal shaft RSH block turned on its side to make a vertical shaft engine. The RSV, though similar to the Goodall RSH, has several engineering changes that make it differ from the Goodall engine. Notably, a different aluminum base from the Goodall base and the incorporation of a plunger-driven oil pump in the oil sump below the engine as opposed to Goodall's centrifugal pump. These plunger-driven oil pumps probably provided better lubrication than the Goodall centrifugal pump did at lower operating speeds. Competition in the manufacture of small engines in the 1950s was fierce, and this probably resulted in Lauson's manufacture of a few economy versions of their RSH series. One outcome of this was the cast-iron Model Type V engine which you see here. These engines should not be confused with the alloy block V-series engines that Tecumseh produced under the Lauson name in the late 1950s and through into the 1960s. The specific engine you're looking at is a V2, a member of the above-mentioned V1 through V15 series. All cast-iron Lauson V-series engines are quite similar, with only minor changes appearing as feature differences, such as rope or recoil start. Lauson also produced another vertical shaft engine, the Model Type R, which is the engine you are presently viewing. The Model R engine is another RSH style engine with an auxiliary horizontal shaft output along with a main vertical shaft PTO. The horizontal shaft drive was used in the production of self-propelled rotary mowers. The Model Type R has a completely redesigned crankcase and was the only cast-iron vertical shaft mower engine Lauson built with a wet sump.